All right, coming up for our next panel. I left my program in the thing. There you go. Looking toward the future of cannabis research, here to lead this discussion is the Chief Operating Officer of the Tallman Group and a good friend of mine, and he's here for us right now. Let's hear it for Justin Tombe.
All right, how's everybody doing today? Can you hear me okay? Excellent, excellent. Well, we're excited to be here and talk a little bit with you about research in cannabis. Let me introduce the two co-panelists here. Rui Soros, do you want to come on up and then Boja or Boja Daroricic, we're happy to have you here. Forgive me for brutalizing names. I'm happy to do it. There's a couple of mics. Grab yourselves a seat. Could you guys give a warm round of applause and a welcome to our panelists here? Thank you much. All right, we can do it in order. That works. That works. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we are in an interesting period of time. I'm sure you've been hearing throughout the day some of the things that are evolving and changing in the regulatory framework with regards to cannabis. And one of our sort of guiding principles here with the Tallman Group, located here in Slovenia, is that the research in the world of cannabis has been sort of limited and biased by the legacy of our prohibition and our regulatory approach. And now as we move into a more modern and an open-minded approach to cannabis, we hope to see a opening and broadening of the approach to research in cannabis, and also an increased investment in that. So that means that there should be some new things that are possible that haven't been before. So first, you know, it's an optimistic view, it's an idealistic view. I'd like to first just ask the panelists, in your experience, do these changes in regulations mean that there will be new opportunities in cannabis research, or how would you like to see these potential changes in regulation affect that?
I can talk for Slovenia. Unfortunately, we don't have yet the new regulation, but I hope, as the government promised, we will have it soon, and I think it will be also easier to research the plant. The cannabis is actually very much research plant, most research plant on the planet, but still we are failing on the preclinical, clinical trials and real life data. You know, we have high, I don't know, science and all that, but it's on the field of medicine, nothing changed actually in the last few years. This is our goal.
So you mentioned that the cannabis plant is one of the most studied plants in the world, and yet you say that the real relevancy and applicability of that data and the science doesn't really impact medicine and its practical use. What would have to change in order for that to
First, we have to change narrative and you know, about cannabis as it whole, because until when the mainstream professionals or medicines is a priori against the cannabis, you cannot do really changes. Then another big thing is how to convince the industry to support cannabis research. We know the pharma industry is supporting clinical trials all over the world because they have their own benefits. But in the area of cannabis research, you don't really get any funds, not the state funds, not in Slovenia and mostly Europe. So this should change as soon as possible.
And Rui, what about you? You want to tell us what your experience is and how the regulatory framework is or isn't encouraging research, and what kind of changes you'd like to see?
Okay, in terms of, it depends from country to country. I know better the situation in Portugal. So Portugal was the first country in Europe to legalize the production of cannabis and processing of cannabis for medical purposes. This law came in July 2018, but it was, of course, a slow process. First, it came as a surprise. Many people didn't believe that it would be approved. It was. Of course, there were 2 or 3 companies already ready to start. One of them, Tilray, big multinational, but then local companies, a few reacted fast to start producing. But it was just, they were just growers, no real research. We also say that in Portugal, science means European money. No European money, no science, private or public. And so 2018, this was at the end of the framework at the Horizon 2020, so money for research was ending. And the new framework, Horizon 2030, was coming. And there is always here at that period between the end of one framework and beginning of next. And to make it worse, so on beginning of the Horizon 2030 framework, it came pandemic, and everything stopped. And with pandemic, everyone started talking about the recovery and resilience plan that somehow made the investments in the framework of Horizon 2030 to delay, meaning that first the resilience and recovery money came, that despite this was decided in 2020, only in 2023 start arriving to the European countries, and it's still going now. The good news is that the 2030 Horizon money programs, it started now. Now we see it happening. So there are lots of grant submissions. And I can say to my surprise, immediately, but thinking better, yeah, it was happening now because these monies, there were no grants for research for many years, since 2018-19. But now that there are these grant submissions in Portugal, I see that several companies are investing in research. Goes from technology, it can go to growth technology, production, processing, but several growers and processing companies are actually submitting grants to do preclinical studies. So it's happening. You know, these processes never go widely, massively. Some companies, they are to the lead, they are beginnings, they are pioneers, and as these companies are putting these new projects with preclinical tests, so private sector working with medicine schools, with pharmacy schools, they will bring more in the future. So I think it starts happening. This is Portugal. In Germany now also with legalization, and this is Germany, things I think will go much, much faster. Also with Horizon 2030 there. We will see definitely preclinical studies going. Clinical studies, it's another division. We are not talking about investing a few hundreds of thousands or even 1 or 2 million. It's big, big investments. Then it will require or governmental, really governmental programs, or the big pharma industry to come seriously into this. But it's happening. I think it's starting. There will be big developments on years to come.
I just want to add, Justin, you asked which kind of legislation I want. I want to have legislation which would not limit, research, and so the science can be real science and not as too many times today politically correct science. And then legislation should follow the real science. Otherwise, we will not, otherwise we are in catch-22 for a long time.
Thank you for that. Understood. Apologize because I realized I didn't give you guys an opportunity here to let the crowd know and the people here know what you actually specialize in and work in. And so as a moderator, I'm sorry I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourselves there. It's such a big family here at the events that we do. Sometimes we get very comfortable and familiar with each other. But why don't you just real quickly for a minute let folks know what your work is in cannabis and where that might influence your view on research.
Our main work actually is for last 10 years to follow cannabinoid products which are used by patients from any market, black, gray, or regular market, because this is the only way that you have really good insight into what is good, what is not good, what helps and what not helps. I hope all this research, as I said, will be legal very soon, because the real research should not be limited, by bureaucratic obstacles, which is actually the biggest problems anywhere, among funds, of course.
Okay. How about you, Rui?
Okay, so complicated to define my company. We are in business for 32 years, and we started by being distributors of analytical equipment. We were founded by PhD students from chemical engineering. But since the beginning that we were also doing, it was development of turnkey systems for people doing research, usually chemist departments, chemical engineering departments, biotechnology departments, pharmacy schools. So we always been also a kind of, not manufacturers, because we always developed prototypes, but somehow extraction became always something that we were looking a lot for. And with legalization in cannabis in 2018, companies working on this area and wanted extraction equipment, we were the reference, so they start calling us to supply equipment for extraction. This is how we entered in cannabis. So we are in cannabis by the technology, not by the science of the therapeutics of cannabis. We are going there slowly, but we entered by technology. So this is how we entered, then we expanded to post-harvest. But in terms of research and development, we kept on just expanding our knowledge and our technologies on all downstream processes of extraction and also more extraction techniques. We were initially just CO2, supercritical fluid extraction, and over time we start having ethanol, solventless, and now also hydrocarbons extraction and all downstreams. At the same time, because we are an ISO 9001 certified company, and recently, in the meantime, we got UGMP certified lab, and even more recently, it was this last quarter, we got a license to do research in cannabis, because we were selling and developing equipment, but we could not test equipment in-house. We had to go to the customers, because we could not have cannabis, not even hemp. In Portugal, hemp is more forbidden than cannabis, actually. Hemp in Portugal is fiber and seeds. Flowers is a residue to be destroyed. So finally, we got the license for R&D, meaning we can have cannabis in-house and we can test. So this immediately, we increased the number of technologies that we are developing, and with this new framework I mentioned, between our own projects and together with universities and cannabis companies, we submitted 4 grants, and with grants or without grants, we are going forward with the research projects. And it's expanding, so it's growing. In the meantime, we are also getting a certification in management of innovation. So we are developing very seriously this R&D department in our company, in which 80% of work is cannabis related.
And may I add, I forgot to say that our institute is also co-organizing seminaries and education courses on the Faculty of Health Sciences about cannabis, because if we don't start to teach, new students about cannabis yesterday, not tomorrow, we will not have professionals for 10 years. Then we helped some startup companies. And with this cooperation, we also joined the space exploration. We were sending some samples to the space. You have to follow somehow. So we are active on many fields.
Great. Cannabis in space. That certainly sounds like something new in the field of research. So there is a theme here, though, that we could reiterate. You mentioned again, cannabis being the most studied plant, and yet we hear how people involved in the industry as a matter of practice, are unable to conduct the research most relevant. You couldn't even bring in, biomass material from cannabis to figure out how to extract it within your business. You have a difficulty sometimes being able to obtain material to use in the practice of medicine. And so, though it has been really studied, it has been really researched, it hasn't been done in the context of what's most relevant and important. As we look as a cannabis industry to move forward, I think that's got to be the emphasis in our communication from the industry to the regulators about what needs to happen. So can you point out, maybe we'll start with you, Rui, one piece of something that's kind of new and or exciting to you, a piece of research or a development of a new technology in your part of the field of cannabis, in either extraction or post-processing?
Can I speak about two?
As long as we have time.
Okay. So, we have two fields, it's post-harvest and it's extraction and purification. So in post-harvest, and this is a quite hot topic because bioburden reduction, it's a very serious problem. I speak about lots of growers and say, oh, we will not have contaminations. I never had a contamination. Everyone lies. Everyone has contaminations. And this is not US, this is Europe. We have to count, there are very well-defined limits. Everything has to be analyzed. It doesn't matter if it is GACP or if it is GMP, it has to be analyzed. The limits are the same. So when we have a crop that is contaminated, what to do with? People are using typically radiation by ionizing radiation, be gamma radiation, electron beam, or X-rays. But this always affects quality of the flower. Loss of terpenes, potential loss of cannabinoids, and flower oxidizes, get brownish. There is a less of quality, and even worse in terms of market, commercial aspects. In Germany, nowadays, flower that is irradiated, so that is subject to ionizing radiation, it has to be marketed as irradiated product, and people don't want to buy. So there is new technology, and all the other technologies, even without having to put on label, like thermal processes by radio frequency or microwaves or plasma or ozone, all of these oxidize and flower is affected. But there is a brand new technology, American technology, using cryopasteurization. Basically, they freeze instantly to very, very low temperatures, cryogenic temperatures with liquid nitrogen. With these microbes, molds, bacteria is killed instantly, and the flower doesn't suffer. It keeps all the terpenes, keeps all the cannabinoids, and even all these pathogens that are eliminated, that are killed, because this is a process in which there is a flow of nitrogen always passing. All these, let's say, corpuses of these dead pathogens, that are very thin particles, they are swept away. So when packaged, this material will not give that smelly taste, odor on moldy flavor. So you get high quality, and you get a very high quality product, even starting with highly contaminated product. This is a huge advance. I follow these bioburden reduction technologies, and this is absolutely the very, very big step. This is next generation bioburden reduction. In terms of extraction, and especially thinking medical cannabis, we go to German pharmacopoeia, they recommend, they say the recommended technology is CO2 extraction, meaning supercritical fluid extraction, so at high pressures and temperatures above ambient, like 35, 40, 45. This is not a must, but is a recommended one. And I agree, that gives you the best extracts, at least in terms of purity, and in a controlled way. But we are traditionally using dry flower. When we look for other techniques, more in recreational, like hydrocarbons extraction, that use fresh frozen flowers, so these extracts come rich in terpenes, which is great, because fresh flower has far more terpenes than a dried flower. This is great. But then there are problems of contaminations, residual solvents like propane and butane on the extracts. To take them out, the terpenes go away. And in Europe, it comes legislation and limits. Is very easy. Is no measurable residual solvents. So this doesn't go well with high terpene content if you have to put under vacuum lots of time to decrease. Now, there are new developments in CO2 extraction, not in supercritical, but using cryogenic temperatures again, but not so cryogenic, like 0 to minus 20, minus 30 degrees centigrade. So we have liquid CO2 with small amounts of co-solvents. This allows you to extract not from dry flowers, but also from fresh flowers, frozen fresh flowers. And so you get the best of both worlds. You get a very high purity extract, very potent extract coming out of the extractor. Potency is typically of 80%, even if you are extracting from hemp, and with a huge, huge terpene potency concentration too.
Exciting. So in both instances, you're looking to get cold with, excuse me, to do to have these new advances. Bojo, do you have something that you'd like to speak to about in the field of medical application that's a new area of research, or do you want to tell us why you're sending samples to space? Something?
Yeah, maybe about space. Space exploration last years, it's a quite interesting story from China to USA and India. And the cannabis is one of the plants which can withstand high dose of light radiation, very high, and let's see what damage can do or will do the cosmic radiation on the plants. Then we also send some other cannabis products to space, and we want to test then what is the difference, if any, when those products come back from the space. So we don't expect anything. We will just follow the science, or let's see what will happen. And maybe next year or in next 2 years, we will be able to tell you more.
Is there any conversation about people being able to use cannabis in space?
Not yet, but you never know. Actually, it would be very good for the astronauts because of all symptoms they can get, like anxiety or depression or whatever. So very good idea, Justin.
Okay, but it might be a little while before we see any pictures of anybody with a joint in the space station.
Not joint necessarily. You have other administration routes.
Extracts.
Indeed, indeed. And Gael, how are we doing on time?
You got about 3 minutes.
And then questions after?
No.
Okay, got it. Well, then let's take a moment to sum things up really quickly, because the field of research in cannabis is actually so big that we could, in this moment, just talk about a couple of small aspects of it. Obviously, we're looking at the way that these regulatory changes can encourage or limit research. But when you look at the plant itself, cannabis produces, at this last count, something close to 140 phytocannabinoids. It has well over 100 terpenoids. There's a whole number of flavonoids that is approaching that, as well as amines and amides and a whole bunch of other phytocompounds, over 500 in total, that this one plant produces. Okay, now those interact with each other, those interact with each of yours endocannabinoid system in really unique ways. And a lot of times when research is done, it starts with the supposition, well, if we give cannabis to this person, is it effective for this? But in fact, I've just mentioned that there's 500 different variables you have to look at and potentially control for to understand this genotype, this chemovar, and all of the interactions with a person, unique conditions that have to be looked at and accounted for. And we're not even talking about the agronomics of how you grow and cultivate the plant, the extraction or post-processing, and then the many industrial applications far beyond just medicine. So the field of cannabis science is actually really vast, and though it seems like we've studied a lot, you've heard from folks here in the industry, a lot of that research hasn't been directed into how we're going to really utilize this plant to get all the benefits out of it. So what's new in cannabis research? Well, actually, a lot more research. That's what's needed, investment in it from a public and a private sector, and also investment in an open-minded approach that just doesn't look at things in really simple terms, black and white, cannabis good or bad. And so hopefully that's the evolution in the industry that we'll be taking forward. Appreciate your guys' time and attention here. I think Ngaio's going to take us away. Can you please give our panelists another round of applause and thank them for their time being here today.
Fantastic. Thank you all very much. And if you have questions, I'm sure you can ask them, because we're going to take a 15-minute coffee and pastry break. We have coffee and pastries in the next hallway.